Welcome back, everyone. Today, we've got a really fascinating explainer lined up for you that sits right at the intersection of big tech, real estate, and antitrust law. We're breaking down a massive legal settlement that essentially just hot-wired the digital real estate market. And honestly, whether you're an everyday renter just trying to hunt down your next apartment or a real estate pro managing a dozen properties, the dynamic we're unpacking today is going to directly impact your wallet and your workflow. To really wrap our heads around how big this is, we got to start with this number. 100 million. Back in early 2025, Zillow paid its longtime Seattle-based rival, Redfin, a cool $100 million. But here's the catch. This wasn't a buyout. According to regulators, Zillow paid Redfin this staggering amount of money just to stop competing with them. Yeah, you heard that right. A 9-figure check literally just to avoid doing any work. As you can imagine, this single transaction set off an absolute firestorm of regulatory action, which we're going to unpack right now.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the $100 million handshake itself, look at how the FTC took action, break down the actual terms of the settlement, and then finish up by looking at why renters should care and the impact this has on realtors.
Let's jump into Section 1, the $100 million handshake, a very, very costly agreement. So to set the scene, picture this. It's February 2025, and Zillow and Redfin are battling it out over what the industry calls ILS, or Internet Listing Services. Think of platforms you probably use all the time, like Zillow Rentals, Trulia, Rent.com, or Apartment Guide. Now, these are classic two-sided markets. On one hand, you've got millions of consumers looking for a place to live, and on the flip side, you have property managers and realtors who pay really good money to advertise their units to those consumers. For any ILS platform to actually survive, it has to perfectly balance both sides. It needs enough apartment hunters to attract the advertisers and enough listings to attract the apartment owners. It's kind of like a giant balancing act. Well, the sheer scale of the concessions made in this 2025 agreement was just wild. In exchange for that $100 million check, Redfin agreed to completely shut down its multifamily rental advertising business. Done. Over. And they agreed to stay out of that market for up to 9 years. But it actually gets crazier, because it didn't stop there. Redfin actively helped transfer its existing advertising customers over to Zillow, and they agreed that their own websites would exclusively display copies of Zillow's apartment listings. So essentially, this deal totally dismantled Redfin as an independent competitor and handed its advertiser base directly to Zillow on a silver platter. Moving right along to Section 2, the FTC takes action. Enter the regulators. You know, the speed of the regulatory response to this deal was honestly remarkable. The ink was barely dry on that February 2025 agreement when the Federal Trade Commission filed a massive antitrust lawsuit in September. Literally just a month after that, New York Attorney General Letitia James led a coalition of 4 other states, Arizona, Connecticut, Washington, and Virginia, in filing a similar suit of their own. Fast forward to August 24, 2026, and boom, a sweeping settlement is announced, officially ending the legal battle and aggressively unwinding the most restrictive elements of that original deal. The absolute core of the regulator's argument here was that this deal was an unlawful scheme to eliminate competition. The FTC alleged that the arrangement flat-out violated the Sherman Act and amounted to an unlawful acquisition under the Clayton Act. Basically, regulators argued this went way beyond some normal, friendly distribution partnership. They viewed it as a blatant pay-to-exit scheme that concentrated power in an already squeezed market, essentially leaving just Zillow and CoStar's Apartments.com as the only major players left in the game. All right, Section 3, breaking down the settlement. Let's see what the fix looks like. Rather than slug it out in an endless trial, the companies agreed to a 10-year stipulated order. Under this settlement, Redfin, which, by the way, is now owned by Rocket Companies, is essentially forced back into the ring. They are on a strict 6-month deadline to completely restart their ILS advertising business from scratch. And look, this isn't just flipping a switch, right? The order demands that they hire a brand new general manager, build out a dedicated sales force, and train up a customer support team. Plus, Redfin made legally binding commitments to invest tens of millions of dollars over the next few years to guarantee they come back as a real, formidable competitor. Now, to make sure Redfin's return actually works, Zillow had to swallow some massive concessions. Get this, in a weird twist of fate, Zillow literally has to share employee information to help Redfin poach Zillow's own staff. To make that happen, Zillow has to completely waive non-compete and anti-poaching agreements for those workers. On top of that, Zillow is strictly prohibited from getting in the way of any customers who want to sign contracts with Redfin. They even have to allow certain current customers to renegotiate their existing contracts penalty-free for a 9-month window. Talk about a role reversal. Zillow has to actively aid its rivals' return.
It's always fascinating to see how the two sides spin things after a settlement like this. On one side, you have FTC Chair Andrew Ferguson, who came out and declared the settlement a complete victory for the American people. He's framing this as a historic win that dismantled an illegal monopoly tactic. But on the other side, Zillow is quick to point out that this settlement includes absolutely no admission of liability or wrongdoing. In fact, Zillow maintains that the core of their original partnership, meaning the part where Zillow listings are syndicated across Redfin's websites, is going to continue unchanged through at least 2030. So from Zillow's perspective, this just adds some flexibility for property managers without really hurting their massive audience reach. Section 4, Why Renters Should Care. Time to talk about the trickle-down effect. So if you're just a normal person hunting for a new apartment, you might be wondering, why does some massive corporate settlement matter to me? And this brilliantly illustrates the exact problem. As New York Attorney General Letitia James pointed out, a lack of competition at the top doesn't just hurt rival tech companies. It trickles down directly to you, the consumer. Think about it. When property managers only have 1 or 2 platforms to advertise on, those platforms can easily charge higher fees. And guess who ultimately pays those increased marketing costs? Yep, the renter through higher monthly rent. Plus, less competition just means fewer platforms actually trying to give you a better search experience.
Pre-settlement, having fewer options for advertisers basically guaranteed those high trickle-down costs we just talked about. But post-settlement? By forcing a newly independent Redfin back into the mix alongside giants like Zillow and CoStar, the market is literally forced to innovate. All these platforms suddenly have to fight for your attention again. That means they have to build snappier apps, offer way better search filters, and demand higher quality photos and data. For everyday users like us, this forced competition results in a significantly better hunting experience and could really help stabilize housing costs that were being artificially pumped up by a lack of ad option. And finally, Section 5, the impact on realtors. Let's look at the new reality for the industry. Now, if you are a realtor or a property manager tuning in, this settlement is a massive earthquake that totally reshapes how you do business, so the crucial point for you is this 9-month renegotiation window. If you're currently locked into an ILS contract with Zillow that you couldn't otherwise cancel within 3 months, the FTC has mandated that Zillow must allow you to renegotiate that contract without any cost or penalty for 9 whole months after Redfin relaunches. This is a huge, immediate opportunity to look at your budgets, and Zillow is legally required to notify you that you have this flexibility. All of this creates a totally new reality for real estate professionals. First off, you get your leverage back. With Redfin fighting tooth and nail to win back market share, there's going to be natural downward pressure on advertising costs. You can actually shop around for the best rates again. But at the same time, because that listing syndication deal remains intact, your properties are still going to maintain their massive reach across both Zillow and Redfin networks. Plus, both companies have already announced they'll be launching brand new standalone advertising products by 2027. So you're looking at far more customized options to market your properties than you had just a few months ago. We've just seen how a single $100 million handshake triggered a total regulatory firestorm, ultimately forcing a major reset across the entire digital housing market. The tech giants have their marching orders, and the competition is officially back on. So I'll leave you with this to consider. As Redfin aggressively rebuilds its standalone platform over the next 6 months, how will this newly independent competitor change the landscape of your next apartment hunt or your next property listing? It's a truly fascinating look at how antitrust enforcement directly reshapes our everyday digital and financial lives. Thanks so much for walking through this explainer with me, and we'll catch you next time.